Think about a place you've really wanted to go to before. Perhaps it's thousands of kilometers away, or maybe an ocean separates you from your dream holiday. Now, let's say you've been working very hard and are finally able to afford a plane ticket that will get you there. You create some time, call your days off, pack your bags, and book a flight. Once at the airport, you check in at the counter, clear security, and head on to your gate where you notice that something is out of the ordinary. The crew walks past and boards the aircraft, yet somebody seems to be missing. Oh well, you don't bother about it too much and you get on board the plane too. Settle yourself down, put aside your luggage, and the PA system comes on and announces its well-renowned line. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard your flight. Please make yourself comfortable as we get ready for departure. Yet it has a twist. The announcement continues on. I'd like to introduce our crew and myself, the robots that will be getting you to your destination today. Now look, it's no shy fact that large corporate entities and big aeronautical industries have been developing this concept for decades, expanding on ideas for the near future. It's at this time that society has reached a new age in flight where humans are just no longer required to fly. However, as aerospace progresses into this realm, safety and ethics are sometimes left behind due to the speed in its evolution. I'd like to introduce myself. An aspiring adolescent working towards my pilot's license who loves all and everything to do with flight. My name is Aleck Covaci, and this morning I would like to talk to you about autonomy in the sky and the variables that affect ethics above the clouds. To start off, I'd like to define what autonomous exactly means as it tends to get mixed up around society. When referring to technology, autonomous is an adjective that describes something to be performed by a device capable of operating without direct human control. Allow me to jump to another question. Who here has been on a commercial flight before? Now, obviously, we're all at home, and unfortunately, I can't see any of you, but I can imagine that some of you may have, while others may have not. And that's okay. To change things up a bit, what if I told you your plane was going to be piloted fully autonomously? Would you still be comfortable to go? Would you have any other feelings? Or would you still be happy to fly? Now, look, there's no doubt that we already have aircraft without pilots in the sky. This includes delivery drones that Amazon uses to transport goods by air right to the customer's home, all the way to the large surveillance crafts that are used as part of the Air Force. In fact, today, commercial aircrafts cross the clouds with just two human pilots. And get this wasn't actually always the case. In the 1980s, the role of the third crew member in the cockpit, the flight engineer, was cut short as controls became automated and were reduced from analog to what are called glass cockpits. Progressing forward in the 90s, the fly-by-wire concept was introduced on Boeing's newest aircraft at the time, the 777, which had most of the hydraulic systems replaced with computers that now process the control inputs made by the pilot. Along with this came new software which sets the heading automatically, switched radios, and teams had also redesigned and polished the autopilot for the new era. Right now in the present day, NASA is currently doing studies on the concept of single piloted airliner cockpits where robots take the full responsibility of the other person's job. As you can imagine, this raises a lot of questions which causes the general public to think how much of the plane's safety is going to become jeopardized. People begin to ask, what if the other pilot becomes incapacitated? Or how will emergencies that require dual attention be dealt with? Now get this. With those concerns in mind, engineers had an even better plan. What if it was possible to not have a pilot in the air at all? Well, in January of 2015, at the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics Scientific Conference, there was John Tracy, who was Boeing's chief technology officer at the time, states, quote, "We are quite confident that technologically the toolkit is filled. With respect to a commercial airplane, there is no doubt in our minds that we can solve the problem of autonomous flight. It's just a question of certification procedures, regulatory requirements, and even more significantly, public perception. Will the flying public be comfortable getting onto a commercial plane with no pilot?" And that's one of the main hurdles to jump when asked this question. How would the flying public react? How long would it take to trust purely artificial intelligence to the point that we base our lives on it, along with the other hundreds of people on board at 40,000 feet above the surface of the Earth? In the morning of October 29th, 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 was making its final preparations in Jakarta, Indonesia, before departing on a flight that was scheduled to be just over 1 hour headed northbound of the country. The pilots had begun the flight as per usual and started a taxi to the runway from which they soon took off. Just a couple of minutes after departure, the aircraft had begun to send irregular information to the jet's computer, triggering the automated feature to force the nose of the plane down and causing it to lose altitude irregularly, despite the pilots doing their best to fight against it to keep the plane airborne. What was even worse was the lack of training the pilots had, who were told nothing about this new feature on board the plane they were flying. Unfortunately, they never made it back to the airport as the plane ultimately nosedived into the Java Sea just 11 minutes after takeoff, killing all 189 souls on board. The plane that was used for that flight was a 737 MAX 8. It's a remastered version of Boeing's 737 family, which is, frankly, a very common and reliable and rather safe series of jets that fly the sky since the 1960s. It's so common and safe that you've probably even flown in it without knowing yourself. However, the particular one involved in this crash first took off on July 30th of 2018. If you remember the date it went down, that means the plane was a young age of roughly 3 months old when it crashed, ruling out the possibility of a structural failure. Reports conducted by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, the Indonesian government, and Boeing revealed that there indeed was evidence of a software problem behind the plane's anti-stalling system, named the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, or MCAS for short. Keep this in mind because it's going to play a key role in this accident. So what is MCAS, you might ask yourself? Well, to answer that, allow me to briefly explain what a stall is first. When the air moving over an airfoil, such as the plane's wings, does not cause sufficient lift to counteract the weight of the aircraft, the plane will lose lift and begin to fall. This typically happens at low speeds or when the nose of the plane exceeds the critical angle of attack. That is, a specific angle which the plane will stall at when exceeded. The MCAS on board the 737 MAX models, including this one, was a brand new software that was designed specifically to have the computer send a signal to the flight controls which would force the nose of the plane back down. This was implemented in order to reduce the likelihood of a stall. In this case, however, the systems on board malfunctioned as the plane took off, even with the pilots doing their best to fight against the computer. As sad as this incident was, unfortunately, it wasn't the only of its kind to happen. Ethiopian Flight 302 suffered the same issue and crashed, killing all 157 on board when departing from Addis Ababa on March 10th, 2019, over 4 months after Lion Air's loss. The airplane in question was the same model MAX 8 that also went down shortly after takeoff due to the same automation issue, the MCAS system on board. Alright, I know that's a lot of information, but what can we deduce from this? Well, autonomous flight has been tested for many years now. However, we can't just go into pilotless flight when we still have automation related problems on board. These issues need to be addressed and fixed on a step-by-step basis, taking things one at a time rather than just rushing to multitask in order to meet a deadline. That being said, when the safety of human lives and business pressure mix together, things tend to get a bit interesting and rather concerning at times. The story of the Max can be looked at in regards to the Darwinian business cycle, where you have large corporate entities such as Boeing be constant to other threats such as aero industries, new competition, and the search for new growth. Sometimes it's going to motivate them and inspire them to innovate as well as progress. An example of this would be the advent of autonomous aircraft. That's good. Other times, however, it prompts them to rush production really quickly to skip small details that collectively build up over time in order to beat a deadline. While the Mags indeed had issues with its software, The other variables that built up to it were economic competition against their European rival, Airbus. Both industries were in a race to make their airplanes cheaper for airlines to operate, especially when it came to fuel prices. In 2010, Airbus stunned the aviation community at the Paris Air Show when they released their own remastered version of their A320, named the A320neo, which burned 6% less fuel than the 737s. This caused airlines to absolutely love the plane, placing over 660 orders in the span of 1 week. Months behind Airbus, the MAX program was thus born. It's a direct response that could save billions of dollars by basing it off the pre-existing 737. So, Boeing had to play catch up, and the pace of the work on the 737 MAX was frantic, placing an enormous amount of stress on the employees. Some even spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the matter. Engineers were pushed to submit technical drawings and designs at roughly double the normal pace, facing tight deadlines and strict budgets. As I said earlier on, skipping small details collectively build up over time to the point that an accident will occur. Business and engineering just doesn't mix, as money simply cannot be put ahead of safety, especially when humans are on the line. So, what is there to take from this? How does this have to do with autonomous flight, you may wonder? Well, the answer to this problem is the ethics that runs closely behind it. How can we be placing money before safety and then be planning at the same time to create airliners with only robots on board when the main reason two jets went down was because of a software fault? Now, of course, don't get me wrong, I'm not calling for a witch hunt. This isn't on to say that the computers on board the planes we fly are useless. Quick, we should throw them away. We do need them. We pilots need them in order to complete various other tasks that are equally, if not more important, to reduce the stress and to keep the focus where it's needed. However, when the systems fail, it's up to them to take over manually, and this, in many times, has saved thousands of lives. Take, for example, Qantas Flight 72, which in October of 2008, an Airbus A330 flying from Singapore to Perth nosedived twice during cruise due to a software issue on board. Thankfully, due to the team of pilots on board, they were able to recover manually and land safely. This is why autonomous flight has various hurdles to jump, including public perception, economics, and most paramount, safety. As long as those issues are in the way, modern commercial aircrafts will continue to have pilots on board. So next time you're on a flight, remember to think about the work that's being done on board and on the ground to keep you safe for hours on end. This is your captain speaking. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.